This video shows a woman on her knees begging the security guard to return her tricycle for collecting waste. She knelt down in front of the security guard and burst into tears. Meanwhile, the guard power trips. And this video shows homeowners in the office of a developer on their knees. A man was fined by the city code officials for setting up a stall on the roadside. He collapsed on the ground, knelt down, and kowtowed to them, begging the Urban Management Bureau not to fine him.
为什么要罚我？大哥，你饶了我吧！大哥，你饶了我吧，大哥！大哥，我错了，你不要罚我，我没有钱，我真的没有钱，现在我太难了。
Here, owners of unfinished buildings knelt outside the government building to defend their rights as homeowners. These videos are from last week or so in China. It happens quite frequently. You see people begging on their knees. Now, there's actually a big issue culturally here. In Asian culture, kneeling is considered the highest form of respect. But when it comes to pleading for a case or certain social interactions, kneeling on the ground is seen as the highest form of shame one can endure to plead for something or to get something out of it. Which is why when Chinese people get on the knees so easily, it begs for the question of kneeling down to authorities, sacrificing their rights, not protesting, and in terms of essentially giving up their dignity in return, seeking forgiveness or seeking compensation. They voluntarily surrender their value as human beings. So the question is, why do Chinese people do it? And why is there a talk that China has a kneeling culture? Well, first of all, you got to understand, many Chinese people are living miserable lives. They go through life having to sacrifice a lot, having to make not so much, and constantly having this pressure from the authorities, and especially if there's some people who didn't come from really good backgrounds and they've had to work hard, such as owning a food stall or having to do delivery, and they run into a lot of these power-tripping officials.
我不活了！本来他妈挣钱不容易啊！我不活了！我不活了！不要碰我！不要碰我！不要碰我！不要碰我！不要碰我！不要碰我！不要碰我！可以呢，可以冇得。不要碰我！不要碰我！
Now, some people say that this is their last resort. They've exhausted every other option. In those circumstances, they have nothing else that they can do. Others say that they've simply given up on their dignity, given up on their values. They haven't even tried. Why, at the core of this so-called kneeling culture, what's happening is there's a fundamental dynamic difference between two groups of people, the CCP and its controlled apparatus versus the regular folks. In this video, migrant workers were owed more than 110,000 yuan in wages. They were trapped in this city. The migrant workers knelt down and begging for help in this video, saying that they need money for the Chinese New Year.
我们现在被困在陕西新平融创小镇工地上了。我们一行5人，去年是经过朋友介绍，从去年7月份至今年8月份，1年多的时间。 中间陆陆续续有给我们拿过生活费，从今年的8月份一直到现在，还欠我们11万多。我们多次来找过这里甲方经理及这新平的有关部门，一直都是说给我们解决这长时间也没有得到结果。中途我们在万般无奈之下，我跟我老公也爬过塔吊。 爬塔吊的当天，经理就出来，我们现在真的是没有活路了。家里有病倒老人，还有上学的大学生，多次要我们回家过年。我们也不是不想回家过年了，可是身上1分钱都没有，回不去，想回不去。在此恳请媒体大 V。 及广大网友们帮帮我们，我们也真的是没有办法了。
It's very strange to people who may not know Asian culture. They see this and they're like, why must people be lower than others? in order to seek something in return. You know, in Western society, even if you're asking for something or you're begging for something, you don't see people on their knees to do so, right? Unless, you know, they've collapsed or something like that. I think fundamentally within the bones is this idea that no matter what, right, no matter your socioeconomic status or what your current conditions are, you're not worth less than somebody just because of those things. So I think there's a basic level of that. And, you know, people say, why don't you just protest or start to revolt against this, right? They've tried. A lot of times they've tried. And people need to understand that the reason they resort to kneeling down is because they know the consequence of protests and to revolt is much greater than what they're already enduring. And few want to really have that when they have a family to feed. You know, they have to resort back to kneeling down. It's a soul-crushing experience for them. This video is from July 6th this year in Henan province. An old man kneels outside the Xingcai County government office on a hot day, and the government closes the electric gate on him. You'll see a lot of these cases of kneeling down happens to petitioners who are in front of these government locations trying to seek justice for a cause. This is from September 25th. A woman kneeled outside the gate of Beijing Second Intermediate People's Court and called out to the president saying that I need to see the president and the injustice for the people. Now, the problem is, of course, we know that 99.9% of the time this doesn't work. The people that are running this government doesn't care. And so what they're doing is, in reality, losing their dignity over nothing. It's not going to get solved. You might raise some social awareness on the issue, and in those rare cases, it does get really big. Something could happen, but in most of the cases, nothing happens. Like this video here, this woman has been petitioning for 6 years with her kids, and the government has done nothing for her.
在奔跑北京的路上，我只想要给我一个公平的道理。我开店，他们报复，出门面不成。我知道我一个普通的老百姓搞不过他们每个部门。
Like I said, because the dynamic of these two groups of people are so messed up, you really don't have a way to get out of it. Let me just compare it to some other countries, the United States, right? Politicians, you see them kneeling on the ground to say sorry to people for whatever the case may be, for their political purposes. In Chinese society, it's the opposite. You never see the politicians kneel down. In Japan, another society very similar to China's in terms of its cultural traditional-wise, the prime ministers, they kneel lower than the people. These people in these videos and pictures, they are victims of natural disasters like earthquake or hurricanes. And you see here, the current prime minister, Shigeru Ishiba, here, kneeling down. This picture is former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also doing the same thing. They're lower than those that have been troubled by different events. Also, the former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who just stepped down recently, they all kneel lower, or they're on their knees, right? These are the politicians. The Japanese princess, Kako of Akishino, in her videos, she has to be equal or lower than those that are being, interacted with. This is obviously, it's part of the Japanese tradition, but it just shows you like the whole dynamic shifts between Japan, US, other countries, and that of China. Right? We also see photos in the US when both presidential nominees go to shake hands of their supporters. You don't see the supporters kneeling down, or it's like as if they have to get something out of those candidates. And in fact, it's almost like strange to me, right? Sarcastically, of course, that it's almost like if you have the power to vote somebody into office, they respect you much more than if you didn't have the power to vote. It's like when China has this justifying their 18 forms of different democracies, yet their people are so not valued. And apparently, if there's only one version of the Democratic Republic and people, all voters, right? Every single one of the voters are treated equally. It's like almost like equality comes from rights. Who knew that? Huh. Interesting. Anyways, I hope this short video explained to you why there's so many people kneeling in China in these unfortunate circumstances. For one, they're out of options otherwise. And for two, I think they just simply have no other ways to express their frustration. And for three, there's a fundamental dynamic that has been built up over this past few decades in terms of where the people stands and where the government stands. And it does happen a lot when the government is in total control. And yeah, we'll leave it there. If you enjoy the content, leave a like, comment below your thoughts on today's topic, and subscribe to our channel. Let me know in the comments, especially if you got some personal stories to tell on this particular topic. And also check out davidzhang.net for the China Insider merches if you haven't purchased it already. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.